So I graduated from UCLA with a bachelor's in aerospace engineering, and then I went to the International Space University and got a master's of science in space studies. And through some ISU connections, I got connected to NASA Ames, and my first job was on the PhoneSat project at NASA Ames, kind of working in the research park. I remember when I was applying for colleges, and I bought a college guidebook and was looking at different universities, and I thought that if I'm looking at colleges, I should also look at majors, and so I started looking at the list of different majors, and I started with A, and I saw aerospace engineering. This is a completely true story, and it really stuck with me, and I couldn't. I looked through the rest of the list, but I couldn't really see anything that sounded cooler than aerospace engineering. And I thought that it was a really great mix of like being able to use math and physics skills, but also the engineering part of it might make it a little bit easier to get a job afterwards. And I'd always looked at space as something like really grand and inspirational, and so it seemed like kind of unbelievable that this was even an option. I mean, one thing was one big career choice I had to make was leaving NASA and joining the company. Back then Planet was called Cosmogia, and it seemed like a big decision because for a long time NASA was my dream job. I thought that was like going to be where I built my career, and I really loved what NASA was doing, and it seemed like a really unwise thing to leave so early in my career. But I also realized that my managers and mentors, Chris Boschhausen, Will Marshall, who were two of the three co-founders at Planet, were a big reason why I loved NASA so much in my position when I was doing things with small sats, with PhoneSat. And so I decided to take a chance, and so I've never regretted that decision. It's been a huge boost to my own personal career and all the experiences I've been able to have. So just making that decision of taking a chance with a garage startup versus sticking around at NASA. And then I think one of the other things is that, so I was born in the Ukraine. My family, which is the former Soviet Union, my family moved to San Francisco when I was very young. I became a US citizen, but I spoke Russian growing up. And so being able to speak Russian when it came time to start finding launches for our satellites was a really big help. So when Will was traveling around the world looking at different launch options, he started taking me with him so that I can help translate and understand the kind of the Russian mindset when it came to launch opportunities. When I was first starting, I think what I didn't realize was just how heavily theoretical my education was, both at UCLA and then to some extent at ISU as well, and that I really could have used more hands-on experience. And so even like very basic things like basic soldering skills or basic programming skills that could be translated to like satellite components, I wished I had focused a little bit more on that in addition to all of the theoretical stuff that was ultimately very useful. But I was missing that piece that I didn't really get too much of in my education at that point. Well, I'll start with why it matters to me. I think that I've benefited from some pretty amazing mentors in my day. Like I mentioned, Will Marshall and Chris Boschhausen and Robbie Shingler, the three of the co-founders of Planet, each have very different styles and strengths, and I feel very lucky that I've been able to learn from them. And more recently, our recently departed from the company, but our CFO, David Oppenheimer, also brought in a lot of very different experience from a finance side and from more of other types of startups in the Valley, experience with that. And so I've personally benefited, and I think that it's really easy once you've understood how much you've gained from other people's mentorship that turning around and giving that to others is so important. And so I've had people reporting to me over the years. I look for opportunities where I can provide mentorship or advice to people. I remember I took an Uber ride, and just talking to the driver, he got really excited about Planet and aerospace and what I was doing, and he kind of shyly asked if I would connect with his son, who's in high school but interested in engineering, and I said of course. So exchanging contact info with the Uber driver, and a couple weeks later he came and I gave a tour to him, his wife, and his son at Planet, just showing them around and talking about what's going on in the satellite world, and CubeSats and small sats and different universities that have good programs with that. And so it doesn't have to be some big thing. It could be a conversation with an Uber driver. So this is something a guy named Al Weston, who worked at NASA Ames. This was passed down through a mentor, Chris, but his three rules were show up, pay attention, and don't panic. And I really like that. I think that those are they sound deceivingly simple, but to actually implement them, day to day, or meeting to meeting, I thought that was a really good set of advice. I'm personally super excited about Elon Musk versus Jeff Bezos. I think that SpaceX and Blue Origin having each other as serious competition to do something that's so world-changing, to have humans expand beyond Earth and working and living in space, in low Earth orbit, on the Moon, on Mars, and beyond. A lot of people have talked about that or dreamed about that over the years, but when I look at who actually has the capability to implement that, those two companies and those two leaders really stick out. And so I think that's going to be a really big, it's my generation's version of the space race, I think.